Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, Dumbfounding Definitions, Dizzying Distinctions, and Diabolical Doctrines, a series sorting through some of the jargon of philosophy. In this video, we're going to be looking at the difference between analytic and continental philosophy. These are two very largely methodologically different areas of philosophy that also often study different content in philosophy, but more recently, the primary distinction between them is methodological. Personally, I generally do analytic philosophy, and analytic philosophy is going to be the most common type of philosophy that you generally see, at least within the English-speaking world. So, simply glancing at the terms, one might suspect that analytic philosophy is solely devoted to maybe the analysis of terms of our language, which is in part where it started, while continental philosophy exists particularly on continental Europe, which is also kind of where that began. But while these differences characterize the beginnings of this distinction, the positions have changed significantly over time to encompass new ideas and to allow for new and different methods. So, analytic philosophy began near the turn of the century with the works of Russell, Moore, Carnap, and Hempel. Simply, they analyzed complex concepts and ideas through the use of symbolic logic that was codified by Russell, Whitehead, and Frege. Russell's solution to the four puzzles of philosophy of language that I offered in another series of videos is a great example of this method. His theory of definite descriptions is a very clearly analytic philosophy method for solving a problem of understanding a concept like existence. While the discipline has changed greatly over time, the principles of logical rigor and clarity of concepts are still present. Analytic philosophers still use intuition, common sense, or scientific discoveries as their basis for experience, and the laws of logic as their means of reasoning and validating arguments. These are going to be contrasted with the kind of tools both of experience and reasoning that are used by continental philosophers. So, continental philosophy has similarly migrated from its original roots, or at least come to include more ideas and principles and positions. Continental philosophy is so called because many of its principal original champions hailed from continental Europe originally, around a similar time to the point of time where analytic philosophy was appearing, particularly in Germany and France. It can trace its origins to Husserl and his phenomenological method of doing philosophy. Basically, this method focuses on description of personal experience of the world instead of logical analysis of collective experiences or logical analysis of words that we use in language. Hopefully that makes sense of the continental are kind of more focusing on describing and imagining personal experiences, while the analytic are more focused on kind of a logical analysis of words or concepts that exist in our collective experience. Heidegger turned those tools that were created to bear on questions of freedom and anguish in his famous Being and Time, and this project was taken even farther by French existentialists such as Sartre. Today, we count some other European-derived positions under the heading of continental philosophy, such as Marxism or deconstructionalism or Hegelian idealism. All of these different ideas can kind of be clumped under the heading of continental philosophy. And so, though the subject matter has been appended over time, there are still some methodological practices that set continental philosophy apart from analytic philosophy. Whereas analytic philosophy generally focuses on kind of collective experience or common sense, intuition, science, something we can all see, continental philosophy leans more towards personal or transcendental experience, absolute experience that moves past those common notions to something deeper that not everyone can necessarily see on the surface. Instead of using that kind of logical inference to move from one concept to another, continental philosophers claim that we have to use our imagination to expand our horizons, and that not everything is going to follow logically from something. We have to sometimes imagine and step outside the box and outside those bounds to get to the next step in the process. Below, find some positions and philosophers that are especially associated with Analytic and Continental Philosophy. This list should just help you get a very basic idea of these areas, not in any way serve as an exhaustive categorization. There are thousands of positions in analytic philosophy, at least. I don't do as much continental philosophy, so I don't know as much about their positions. But there are many philosophers that are associated with analytic, as well as many philosophers that are associated with continental philosophy. So this is just a small sampling of some of those positions. So, on the analytic side, we have, of course, Russell, Moore, Carnap, Hempel, Quine, Kripke, Davidson. The list could go on. A lot of 20th century philosophers you've heard that are associated with that kind of analytic tradition will be found here. And some positions are logical positivism, empiricism, naturalism, and just because we're talking about truth in another series, the correspondence theories of truth generally could be found under analytic theories, as well as a number of other theories of truth. Under the continental heading, we have Husserl, Heidegger, Hegel, Sartre, Derrida, Foucault, and Marx. And some of the continental positions include phenomenology, Marxism, existentialism, post-structuralism, deconstructionalism, and hermeneutics. There are significant differences in the styles of these two disciplines, but due to its clarity, the style of analytic philosophy is generally used when communicating between the two disciplines, and it remains the primary type of philosophy studied in the English-speaking world. Because continental philosophers often speak in idioms or metaphors or more flowery language, we generally prefer to translate continental philosophers into kind of the language of analytic philosophy to understand them, as opposed to translating analytic philosophers into a more flowery or obscure language. But that might just be my bias being an analytic philosopher myself. Watch this video and more here at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.